November. As members are aware, the public element of today's meeting is being live streamed, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Town Clerk, and good afternoon, members. Welcome all members, officers, and of course those members of the public who are watching our deliberations, at least in part one of this Policy and Resources Committee today. Now, members, we have a deceptively short agenda before us today, which gives me reason for optimism that if we discharge the business effectively, this may be one of the less lengthy meetings. But that said, we must do justice to all of the agenda items. There are some pretty weighty items, actually, at least a couple of really weighty items on it as well. And I'd like to just remind members that unless you gave notice to the Town Clerk by our deadline on Tuesday, we won't be discussing the starred information only items, and I won't be accepting questions unless you've given notice, and you haven't. But before we begin, I'd just like to congratulate our new Lady Mayor, Alderman Dame Sue Langley, not just on obviously her accession to the mayoralty, but also to inform you that she has rejoined this committee as an ex officio member, which probably means we won't see an awful lot of her during her mayoral year, but it's lovely to welcome her back. And can I, whilst I'm just extending welcomes, welcome our fellow member Layla Bolton, who is observing our proceedings here this afternoon as well. You're very welcome, Layla. Nice to have you with us. Right, item one, Town Clerk, please, the apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies absent have been received from the Lady Mayor, Munsa Ali, Deputy Henry Colthurst, Steve Goodman, Shravan Joshi, Alderman Vincent Keaveney, Deputy Paul Martinelli, Deputy Andrew Mayers, and Deputy Benjamin Murphy. Alderman Bonnet Masiada has also sent apologies for lateness.
Thank you very much. So we have a fair few apologies, but as I always say in these scenarios, what we lack in quantity, we more than make up for in quality of our members around the table today. So we move to item two, members' declarations, Town Clerk.
I'm not aware of any declarations, but members now have an opportunity to make these on the respective items.
Members, are there any additional declarations or any new declarations that any member wishes to make? Seeing none, we will move swiftly on to item three, the minutes, Town Clerk.
And these are considered the minutes as follows. Firstly, 3A, the public minutes and non-public summary of the meeting held on the 16th of October.
Thank you. Members, are there any comments on the accuracy on the public minutes of our meeting in October? Seeing none, are you happy to approve them? Thank you very much indeed. Item 3B is for information only, which is the non-public, which is the Capital Buildings Board meeting held on the 24th of September, I believe. So we move swiftly on to item 4, Town Clerk.
This is a report of the City Community Infrastructure Levy and on-street parking reserve and capital bids.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Just a word about this, members. This report was recommended by RASC. It went to RASC, with the exception of the bids for the Barbican Podium funding. Members also discussed the reallocation of funding from the West Smithfield Area Public Realm and Transport project to cover a shortfall in the London Museum's Section 278 budget. This is a short-term cash flow issue, and the majority of funds would be returned to the Smithfield project, but I think it's right to make you aware of it today. And the chairman can certainly respond to any questions on this. We approved the majority of the bids. However, we chose to consider the 2 bids for the funding for the Barbican Podium in the non-public session, as some of the necessary information relates to the restricted report at item 12. So I guess the question is, are we content to follow the recommendations of RASC for the majority of the bids and return to the Barbican Podium funding in the non-public section, which I think is the appropriate route? Jason. Yeah, okay, thank you. Anybody want to comment or any questions or discussion on this item? If not, are you prepared to approve? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Item 5, Town Clerk, please.
Item 5 is a report on the city plan, main and additional modifications.
Yeah, members, I'd like to commend the progress that's been made on the city plan, and indeed all those officers and indeed members who put a huge amount of time and work into this. It emerged that from the examination hearings with just over 60 main modifications, which sounds a lot, but I'm told is actually extremely low number for local plans. And so thank you to our officers in our planning team for their excellent work. The suggested modifications to the city plan have already been considered in detail by both the local plans subcommittee and the planning and transportation committee. And before we open up to any questions from members on it, on the advice from officers, I would like to amend the recommendations as policy and resources does not need to recommend the modifications to court. So this is a governance issue, members. So I'm proposing that the recommendation be modified to the following wording. The Policy and Resources Committee endorses the proposed approach to the main and additional modifications to the City Plan 2040, noting its impact on corporate strategy. And before I can put that amendment at the relevant point, I will need a seconder, and the deputy chairman has very kindly just volunteered to second that amendment. So, Rob, I think you're going to provide us with a very short introduction to the modifications and the next steps. Where's Rob? There you are, Rob, down there.
Many thanks, Chairman, and good afternoon to members of the committee. Members of this committee will need no reminding of the importance of the city plan. This is one of the City Corporation's principal strategies and the key document in guiding how the square mile will develop over the next 15 years. Members will be aware that just over a year ago now, the City Corporation submitted the city plan to the Secretary of State for public examination, and the examination hearings were held over 3 weeks between March and June, attended by a really broad range of stakeholders, overseen by 2 independent planning inspectors from the Planning Inspectorate, and they were very successful in terms of the modifications that have now come out of those. Following the close of the hearings, the inspectors have sent those modifications, and as the chairman has said, we've received just over 60 modifications, a very low number for local plans, reflecting, I think, the confidence that the inspectors have at this stage in the city plan. It is important to note that these modifications are the inspectors' proposed main modifications. We are effectively consulting on their behalf, and there isn't therefore the opportunity for the City Corporation to amend the modifications. They have, as the chairman says, been considered and approved for consultation by the Local Plan Subcommittee and the Planning and Transportation Committee last month. The final decision on amending corporate strategy would then be taken following the receipt of the inspector's report early next year, and that will be brought back to this committee, to the Planning and Transportation Committee, and to the Court of Common Council following that for final adoption of the city plan, which is intended to happen in June or July of next year. Very happy to take any questions that members may have. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Rob, very much indeed. Members, any questions or observations or comments? Seeing none then, are you happy to approve the report as amended? And the amendment is just a technical governance amendment, as I said. You happy to agree that? Thank you very much indeed. Just at this point, I just want to correct something I said at the very start. I welcomed by accident or congratulated by accident to using the wrong wording. I referred to Alderman Sue Langley. I should have referred to Alderwoman Sue Langley, and I would just like to make that correction for the record. Town Clerk, please, from my initial words. Item 6 and 7 are both for information only, and item 8 on questions relating to the work of the committee. Town Clerk.
Thank you, Chairman. We did receive 2 questions, although I'm afraid, unfortunately, only one was received before the deadline from the Deputy Chairman. You've been in touch with Mr. Tunbridge. Is there any other question? And we've agreed to hold it open until the December meeting.
I have indeed, yes. But the Deputy Chairman has asked a question or given notice in the due time to ask a question. So, Deputy Chairman, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Chairman. It's there's a question that came out relating to branding, which actually came out of the Lord Mayor's show. But as I'm rising to speak on the Lord Mayor's show, I would like to congratulate all of those that were involved in putting on what I thought was a really fantastic Lady Mayor's show, including Alderman Tim Hales. The question really arose from probably amongst other things, but the thing I noticed was the one-page sort of map and booklet which we hand out to people who are attending the show had both the Lord Mayor's show branding, that's fine, that's a separate company, City London Corporation branding, but also something relating to the City of London, as in the sort of visitor thing, where we had I'm not how to describe it, a sort of roundel, another piece of branding. We had a recent meeting at the Corporate Affairs Subcommittee where I thought we had agreed that we were going to have some consistency of branding across all of the corporation. And I do think there will be different views on this, I suspect, but I think having multiple branding does not help us in the City of London reinforce what the city does to the broadest range of the city community, whether those are people who live, work, or visit the city. So my question really is, what are we doing to finally bring consistency to that use of our brands, particularly as it relates to some of our culture piece? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. And for what it's worth, I 110% endorse the question and the point raised by the Deputy Chair. I do think we've got a danger here of confused branding, and it's not something, in my view, that should be left to just roll along as it seems to have been doing. I think we need to take decisive steps to operate with one identity for this organisation, not a number of identities. Now, I can see one should be wanting to sort of speak on this. Sir William?
So, no, I agree with that. However, I was very proud to see the Barbican branding. So I think we have to be careful. There are different brandings, GSMD, different branding, Barbican, different branding. They're part of the City of London Corporation, but, you know, there's an opportunity to brand some of the great assets and institutions we have. The Barbican was right there opposite the Mansion House, as was and the Guildhall as well. In fact, the Guildhall School of Music and Drama had a brilliant float, and everyone was very impressed by that. But I think you're absolutely right. This was a start, and I also add my congratulations to Alderman Tim Hales for all the hard work he's done as with the Lord Mayor's Show Limited. But there's an opportunity, and we should build on what we've started.
Thank you, Sir William. And as I call Alderman Tim Hales, may I also add my congratulations to Alderman Tim Hales?
Overwhelmed with congratulations. Thank you, everybody. And just on that note, look, it's a team effort, and many officers were behind the scenes to deliver what I thought was an absolutely superb show. And I'm glad that the weather was the weather on Monday and not the weather on Saturday. We were very, very lucky this year. I can't remember, James, what you said the third brand was on the programme. It's always had the Lord Mayor's Show pageant master type branding and the corporation branding. I can't recall what you said the third one was. On the topic of branding generally, look, I think there's a bit of strength in diversity to Sir William's point. It's essential that we do this, under the umbrella of the city and the corporation. But actually, sometimes having these differentiated brands are quite helpful. So in particular, in relation to the Lord Mayor's Show, having it delivered through LMS as opposed to the corporation is actually quite a useful thing to have in conversations around sponsorship and buying floats and so forth. So I agree with you. We can't have a diaspora of everything going off left, right and centre. But actually, some of the power of our brands, Barbican being a classic example, are so underutilised. We should be leveraging much more effectively. And I won't go off on a rant on commercialisation because you've heard it all before. But I think there's a fine balance between, scattergun approach and leveraging what we have in terms of a portfolio of very powerful assets.
I'm going to let the Deputy Chairman make a point of clarification.
Yes, and sorry, the additional logo I was referring to is the City of LDN sort of, where we've got a separate website and we have a separate, complete separate logo, which does not reference or tie back to the City of London crest. So I think where we have Barbican or schools or whatever else, we typically will have the crest and then that sort of a brand alongside, which I absolutely support, and we should be leveraging that. It's where we're producing something that seeks to almost be something that could be a third-party organisation, almost like a bid or something else like that. And it just feels confusing. If it's provided by the corporation, there should be a link back in my view. But thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Helen Fentiman.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this conversation reminds me that there's been quite a lot of work done on branding in the corporate affairs communication subgroup, which Jason chairs. And I'm sorry, my memory fails me, and I can't recall exactly where that work has got to. But this seems to me to be a classic example of the sorts of things that we ought to be gripping as part of our branding strategy. And there'll be a number of ways of describing City of London, Mansion House, or City of London and family of partner organisations, however you choose to describe it. But perhaps we could be reminded of the work to date on branding through that subgroup, and then that will help frame the conversation here, I think.
Well, this seems like a very good moment to call on the chair of the Communications and Corporate Branding Committee.
Can I say, Chairman, I'm very grateful for all the interest that so many members are taking in branding for the corporation, and that we're actually all singing from the same hymn sheet. And by the way, I'd like to also pass on my congratulations for a wonderful Lady Mayor show. It's the first time that the worshipful company of communicators has had the chance to partake in such a show, and there was great rejoicing, I can assure you, from all of us. We very much, this is something I helped to kick off and really champion when I took over as chair of the committee. This work is due to come back for the committee. I can tell you that both officers and members are aligned on our need to get a grip on this and to have one joint unified brand going forward. That's the direction that we're heading, and we will address this problem. There are still a few things that need to be ironed out, but you know, we are all heading in the same direction. I just want to reassure you, Chairman and Deputy Chairman, that that will be our destination.
Thank you very much, Jason. I think the Deputy Chair and I welcome that assurance, but we were just quietly whispering to each other about, well, what about the timing? Can you give us any idea of what the timing around this might be? Because we don't want to be here in a year's time having this conversation again.
I believe it's either, I think it's due to come back to the next committee meeting. So action on this will be very short.
I will ask the Director of External Communications, interim, to comment.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's due. So just for people's awareness, that brand review work, which did go to Comms and Corporate Affairs Subcommittee and then went to Policy and Resources Committee, and then it went to court. And there were some questions raised at court, which meant that it needs to go back to Comms and Corporate Affairs Subcommittee. The current plan is for that to come back in December, and then a subsequent P&R early in the new year. And it will address a variety of the things that have been raised today. We are very much committed to one consistent brand and understand that that needs to be the future. Thank you.
The Deputy Chair informs me he is happily reassured by both the Director and the Chair's responses to his committee and all the other welcome contributions from other members on this topic. So we will take it there and move on. On item 9, any other business that the Chairman considers urgent? Again, very, very lackadaisically of me, I should have welcomed an observer, Baroness Dorothy Thornhill, who is here as part of the LGA peer review, which is currently going on. Members will be aware that they've been with us for a couple of days, and a very warm welcome to you, Baroness, who is here as an observer of our meeting this afternoon. That is the only item of other business. So we move to item 10, which is the exclusion of the public. Our members agreed that we should at this point exclude the public. Thank you. And may I thank those members of the public again who have been watching our proceedings online. Town Clerk, will you please advise me when the link has been taken down? Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. The link has